This morning, you woke up and ate breakfast. You didn't think twice about it. At noon, you'll eat lunch. Tonight, dinner. You've done this almost every day of your life, and you've never once asked why. Nobody handed you this schedule. No doctor prescribed it. No ancient wisdom demanded it. 3 meals a day is not biology. It's a story, and it's one of the strangest stories in human history. So where did it actually come from? And does your body even want it? Let's go back, way back. For most of human existence, there was no such thing as a mealtime. Early humans did not eat breakfast. They did not eat lunch. They ate when food existed, and they went hungry when it didn't. Archaeological sites across Africa and the Middle East show the same pattern again and again. Scattered animal bones, cracked seed husks, the remains of whatever could be caught or foraged that day. There was no pantry. There was no fridge. There was no guarantee. Some days brought a feast. Other days brought nothing at all. Eating wasn't a routine. It was the result of a successful hunt, a lucky patch of berries, a fish that didn't get away. For roughly 300,000 years of human history, that was simply how eating worked. Mealtimes, as a concept, would have meant nothing to these people. Then, around 10,000 BCE, everything started to change. In the region we now call the Fertile Crescent parts of modern Iraq, Iran, and Turkey, humans began farming. For the first time, food didn't have to be chased. It could be grown, stored, and planned for. This changed everything about how humans lived. Permanent settlements formed, villages grew into towns, cooking became more complex, more communal, more intentional. But even with agriculture, 3 structured meals a day still did not exist. What people ate and when still depended entirely on geography, culture, and how much daylight they had to work with. Ancient Egypt offers one of the earliest glimpses of a structured eating pattern, and it wasn't 3 meals. It was 2. Egyptians typically ate a small morning meal of bread and a larger evening meal built around vegetables, grains, and whatever protein was available that day. 2 meals. Not 3. The ancient Greeks came a little closer to the modern pattern, but not by much. They had akritisma, a light morning bite of bread dipped in wine, then ariston, a midday meal, then deipnon, a heavier evening gathering. 3 names, 3 windows, but not everyone ate all 3, and none of them were fixed to a clock the way meals are for you today. And then there's Rome. You'd expect one of the most organized civilizations in human history to have a strict meal schedule. They didn't. In fact, the Romans were deeply suspicious of eating more than once a day. They associated multiple meals with excess, with a lack of discipline, with gluttony. Their main meal, cena, was originally eaten around midday, but over time, it shifted, later becoming the evening meal you'd recognize today. A small morning bite called ientaculum existed, but it was barely treated as real food. For a huge stretch of European history, 1 meal a day was the cultural ideal, not 3. The clearest proof that 3 meals a day isn't natural comes from a moment of collision between 2 very different worlds. When European settlers arrived in the Americas, they were stunned by how indigenous peoples ate. There was no fixed structure. People ate according to the seasons, according to what was available, according to need, not according to a clock. To European eyes, raised on emerging ideas of order and schedule, this looked chaotic, undisciplined, even uncivilized, in their words. That judgment says far more about European culture than it does about biology. And ironically, it was that very cultural bias, the belief that structured eating equaled civilization, that helped push the 3-meal system outward across the world in the centuries that followed. So when did 3 meals actually start locking into place? One of the earliest institutions to formalize it was, of all things, the British Royal Navy. As far back as the 1500s, the Navy served sailors 3 set meals a day: a simple breakfast, a substantial midday meal, and a lighter dinner. This wasn't about health science. It was about labor. Sailors performing relentless physical work needed fuel at predictable intervals. And a ship is one of the easiest places in the world to enforce a rigid schedule. Everyone eats when the bell rings. There's nowhere else to be. It was one of the first large-scale examples in history of eating being organized entirely around a system rather than around hunger. But the moment that truly cemented 3 meals into ordinary daily life for millions of people was the Industrial Revolution. Starting around 1760 in Britain and spreading across Europe and North America, this era changed something even more fundamental than technology. It changed how humans related to time itself. For the first time in history, Huge numbers of people weren't working fields with loose seasonal rhythms. They were clocking into factories with fixed, rigid hours. You arrived at a set time. You worked until a set time. You got one break in between. Breakfast before the shift. Lunch during the break. Dinner after the whistle blew. It mapped perfectly onto the new rhythm of industrial life. 3 meals a day wasn't a scientific discovery about the human body. It was an organizational solution to a factory schedule, and it worked so well that within a couple of generations, it started to feel like it had always been that way. Breakfast, specifically, had a strange journey. The word itself literally means to break the fast of the night before. In medieval Christian Europe, eating before morning prayer was often discouraged, so breakfast as a full, regular meal was slow to take hold. But skipping food before a 10 or 12-hour industrial shift wasn't a spiritual discipline anymore, it was a genuine health hazard. Breakfast stopped being optional and became essential. Dinner shifted too. Before industrialization, the main meal of the day was usually eaten at midday, when natural daylight was strongest and work happened outdoors. But as gas and electric lighting improved, and factory shifts stretched deep into the evening, the main meal drifted later and later until, by the mid-1800s, dinner after work had become the anchor point of the day across much of Europe and the United States. Then, in the early 20th century, one final piece fell into place, and it came from somewhere you probably wouldn't expect. An entrepreneur named John Harvey Kellogg helped popularize breakfast cereal as a health food. Through aggressive advertising campaigns in the 1920s and 1930s, the idea that breakfast is the most important meal of the day spread everywhere into newspapers, into households, into common sense itself. It wasn't purely science, it was also commerce. Cereal companies needed people eating breakfast every single morning, and the campaign worked so well that the phrase is still repeated as fact almost a century later. So here's the real question. After all that history, the sailors, the factories, the cereal ads, does your biology actually want 3 meals a day? The answer is more interesting than a simple yes or no. Inside your body is a circadian rhythm, an internal clock, running on roughly a 24-hour cycle. Research on metabolism shows that the timing of your meals affects blood sugar, insulin sensitivity, and even how your fat cells behave at a cellular level. In the morning, cortisol rises, and your body becomes remarkably efficient at processing food. Insulin sensitivity is close to its peak, meaning carbohydrates are more likely to be converted into usable energy rather than stored as fat. Eat that exact same meal late at night, and the outcome changes. Blood sugar rises higher, sleep quality drops, fat storage increases. Your hunger hormones follow this rhythm too. Your body actually starts preparing for meals before you take the first bite, a phenomenon researchers call physiological food anticipation. Your biology isn't passive here. It learns your habits, it predicts your patterns, and it adjusts itself around whatever schedule you give it. Which reveals something important. What matters most probably isn't the exact number of meals. 2, 3, even 4 can all work reasonably well as long as most of your eating happens during daylight hours, when your body is metabolically ready for it. But biology is only half of this story. For tens of thousands of years, humans have gathered around food not just to survive, but to connect, long before factories, office hours, or cereal commercials existed. Shared meals were how communities built trust and signaled safety to one another. Research in social psychology consistently finds that people who eat regularly with others report greater happiness, stronger relationships, and a deeper sense of belonging. 3 meals a day, whatever its tangled historical origins, gives you 3 built-in opportunities every single day to do something deeply, unmistakably human, sit down, and connect with someone else. So why do you eat 3 meals a day? Because sailors needed a schedule that matched their labor. Because factory workers needed predictable breaks between shifts. Because medieval tradition discouraged eating before morning prayer. Because industrial society reorganized human life around the clock. Because a cereal company needed you to eat breakfast every single morning. And because, underneath all of that history, your biology already ran on rhythms that happened to line up with it. 3 meals a day is not a law of nature. But it isn't a meaningless invention either. It's the slow, tangled result of centuries of religion, agriculture, industry, commerce, and human biology quietly shaping one another layer by layer, century by century, until it became something you never had to think about. Tonight, you'll probably sit down for dinner, just like billions of people before you. And now, when you do, you'll actually know why.